Welcome to episode 15 of the Liz McMullen Show. My guest this evening is Andi Marquette. Welcome to the show, Andi.
Hi, Liz. Thank you so much. This is awesome. I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. I know we're going to have a gaggle of laughs.
We better.
Hee hee. You know, before launching into anything, one of the things I really appreciate about your writing is how colorful it is and how it's so visual and intense. Like I find myself, stopping in the middle of reading some of yours and just like copying down the quote. It's like, I want to read this quote when we have the interview. I have several of them, of course.
I feel kind of sick now.
Okay, this one is from one of your short stories, Floral Designs. Her hoop earrings nearly bumped her shoulders, and Marissa wondered how she managed to wear jewelry the size of a child's bracelet on her ears. But she did, and it worked. Debbie always managed to look like a cross between a crazy gypsy's fortune teller and a retro soul trained dancer. Definitely not an easy thing to do, and definitely not for the faint of heart dressers.
I love Debbie.
I was like, fabulous! It's like, first of all, fabulous. Second of all, I want in her wardrobe.
Debbie's based on several people that all had this crazy fashion sense, and it always worked because of the attitude. Fashion isn't just about clothes; it's about attitude. And I went to school in Boulder, Colorado, with quite a few people who dressed like that, and I always used to think, "Wow, how do you pull that off?" But it's awesome. That's something I could never do, but right on. Go, Debbie.
Absolutely. Because for me, even though I don't do much now, I've never grown out of that love of dress up. And dress up doesn't, and for also, and one of the reasons why I had that series on gender and sexuality, my dress up plays with the gender a lot. When I was in my 20s and my teens, I could rock a butch look, an androgynous look, a femme look, a club kid look, and it was all about having my music blast really loud and going in my closet and seeing what I felt like wearing for the day. And I loved that stuff. I loved it. That's why I was like, I want in her closet right now.
She's open. She'll let you come on in. Try stuff on. Right on.
Absolutely. One of the most fun days that I had, I went to a consignment shop and also other vintage clothing stores, and I had, big bags coming back to my house. And at the time on my block in Hoboken, there were a lot of kids, ranging from 4 to, maybe 13 or so. And one of my finds was this flapper dress.
Oh, neat.
And it was red, and it had like the swishy string fabric kind of thing. Mm-hmm, so It was tiered. And if you put it on and shook, the fabric went
kind of cascade and move. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So they were going through my bag and they saw that. And so the boys and the girls tried it on for a good swish.
Well, yeah.
It's awesome. It's sparkly and swishy, of course.
Right. My inner drag queen would totally appreciate that. Totally.
Exactly. And it's funny that you say drag queen because, even now when I dress up, if I'm dressing up very feminine, I still see it as drag. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not a femme, but I love this stuff. It's like, it's something to play with. It's wonderful, And from your same story, the floral design, the other thing that I thought was fabulous was this description of Marissa when she's trying to deal with Gabriella coming in to buy some flowers.
And the first time Gabrielle comes in?
Yeah, and so she thinks it's like, oh, this is for, because Marissa's a floral designer, and she always talks to people and sees what they're looking for and then comes up with an appropriate arrangement. And when Gabriella...
It's an art form, Liz.
It is.
It's art.
It's almost, it sounds like mixology, like a really good bartender, somebody putting that together.
It is.
So what I thought was...
Props to florists.
Yes. Did you do research for that? How did you know all those things about flowers?
I know people.
You know people. That sounds mysterious. So so this is another clip from that story.
I've always been interested in flowers.
Yeah.
Not because I'm a green thumb. I actually kind of suck at growing things. But they're art. And if you go into a good florist shop, they kind of like size you up, and they'll ask you certain questions, and then they'll ask you like, what kind of flowers are you looking for? What color, what smell? And then you have to sort of like answer, and that's I'm Gabriella when I go into a flower store. I don't know anything about flowers, but a good florist will kind of walk you through it, get a sense of who you are and who you're trying to buy flowers for, and then they'll put together like usually a really great arrangement. And you can find, just talking to florists and asking them, well, what do the flowers mean? Mm-hmm. And I am a font of useless, trivial information that will serve me no purpose but fun at cocktail parties.
Creating awesome characters.
I just kind of knew, these kinds of flowers, this is what I'm looking for. And then I thought, well, let me make sure and check on the meanings of some of them. So I did that. But most of the stuff I write, yes, I do actually have to research.
But it was so cool because I could see her mind working, and I know that I do similar things. Like if I'm on a long walk, or if I'm exercising, things will start to click together in my brain, for stories or whatnot. And I liked watching Marissa's thought process as she's putting together this this person, whomever Gabriella was buying this for, and she's fine-tuning her image. And then I liked seeing it play out into the flowers that she chose. But one of the things that made me laugh in the beginning, this is a quote from there, Marissa forced her frown as far away from her face she could get, short of removing her lips.
You're like the third person who loved that quote.
I love that. I was like, wow, short of taking my lips off my face.
We all know some woman who is like totally cute, and you totally think she's a player, and you just are like, oh, I really don't want to have to deal with this person, and you're trying not to be like crappy to the person. Mm-hmm. But you want to be polite. You're in a business situation, so you're trying to be polite, but yet you're just like, oh, I know all about you. I know all about you, Gabriella.
I got your number.
Yeah, even though, as we find out, maybe not.
Well, I liked, first of all, I liked that Gabriella was a butch that didn't have a woman's name that was truncated to make it butcher. Because that's not always happens. Usually there's some really funky spellings for names so that the butches have a more butchy name. And I kind of like that she was Gabriella.
Well, that's her name.
Of course it is. What was I thinking?
I mean, that's what she goes by. Mm-hmm. She's an artist. She goes by that.
I like that. No, I liked it all together. And what was another story that I read of yours? I have notes next to me, really longhand. Longhand notes.
Very old school. Very nice.
I know. I wrote them by hand.
That's how I take notes for my books, by the way.
Yeah.
I keep a Moleskine notebook. Each book gets a section.
Do you know, every time I try and keep a journal, I never fully utilize one. I feel like but they're so pretty, and I like going to bookstores and buying them. They're so wonderful, but I never fill them. But this is
shelves of blank ones. I love them. I just love the whole idea.
Yeah. And they smell good, and they're pretty, and I love their bindings, and if they're leather. And
right? And then I think, I don't want to mess it up with my bad handwriting. Oh, my God. But then I do.
Yeah, this is just computer paper. I had a little clipboard, and I was writing notes. Oh, so the other thing that I really dug was Dinner Party. And
Shay and Brisa.
Oh, one of your readers, Terry Fontaine, and she was curious about what your favorite meal would be, because you're always talking about food. And
I know, I put a lot of food in my work, don't I? What is that about?
Yum. That's what that's about.
Well, part of it is because that's what people do, is they eat. Especially in a romance, at some point, the characters are going to eat together, and you get a sense of somebody over a meal. At least that's how it is in my life. Maybe people don't date like that anymore. I don't know. But I'm a huge foodie, and it started probably when I moved to New Mexico, back to New Mexico in 92. And I just kind of started getting interested in food, and I have food allergies and food restrictions, so I had to get really creative. And as it turns out, a lot of Asian cuisines and Mexican cuisine and New Mexican cuisine were stuff that I could eat and experiment with. So I kind of just started going crazy with food. And I have a lot of people in my life right now who are actually chefs and foodies. So I get all kinds of really cool recipes and really cool meals. So I learn a lot about food just from my friends. And it's important that I portray that in my work, because that's something everybody does. We all eat. And why not share a meal in the pages of a book? I mean, I bond over food. And so my characters tend to do that too.
Did you get that from your family?
No. No, actually, I grew up on a farm. And so I was like, a free range child. And we had a lot of organic but it wasn't anything fancy. It was just, we had the basic staples. And it wasn't until I went to college that I branched out a lot and started trying all kinds of different foods. And then when I was having problems with my allergies and realized that I needed to really explore what I could and could not do with food, that just kind of I just got really adventurous. We'll just say that, with eating.
The reason why I ask is that there are some cultures who are really food is love.
Absolutely.
And sitting around the table is, it's a communal thing. Like my mother, her father's Croatian.
Oh,
and
wow. So yeah, you guys have that tradition.
So we have that, and my grandmother was from Oklahoma.
There's a tradition there too, though.
Yes, but and she had one. The love around a kitchen is just an amazing thing. And if you're Irish, there's no matter what kind of money you have, everybody ends up in the kitchen.
This is so true.
It is.
It can be the best room in the house, and Brisa's kitchen is like that.
Oh.
Like I said, I don't come from any heavy-duty food traditions, but my parents were very big on having family meals. Mm-hmm. And we did that up until I graduated from high school and left home. That's what we did. We had, family meals in the evenings, and we would go through the day, and I think people need to do that more, actually. But it wasn't necessarily the food that brought us together. It was the whole act of sharing the meal that brought us together. Then I kind of branched out, and now it is about the food as well as sharing the meal for me, because I like to try new things. So, Croatian.
Yes.
Send me recipes, girl.
You want to know the funniest thing, though, is that the culinary traditions that I learned from my grandfather were not Croatian, and they were Italian. So oddly enough, I learned how to cook Italian from my grandfather. But if you think about it geographically, they're just across the Adriatic, and so making
not that far away.
Yeah, so making a wicked good marinara. So when you're talking in the short story Cookies, I could smell, that kitchen, that marinara sauce, and, I thought it was really funny. You had the Trinity, which was the Holy Trinity, which was garlic, oregano, and basil. And I was like,
well, that was her Trinity. Now the kitchen there represented not just love, but also kind of a place of pain for the main character. That was a really painful story for me to write. I'm not really sure where it came from, but I cried. I cried when I wrote that story.
Well, it's there. You don't know exactly what their lives were like before, and they don't have names. That's the other thing that I realized.
I did that on purpose. Yeah.
It had to be intentional because one of the things I'm terrible with is names. So whenever I make my little handwritten notes, my notes consist of the names of the main characters, so that I'm not when she, her name.
That lady in scene.
She was blonde.
Yeah, that one.
It was spiky. She liked to wear, earth tones. I don't remember her name.
Yeah, gotcha.
So I keep that. And the thing about cookies was, you got a sense that the one character cheated on the other, and that they stayed together, and they had been staying together in the same home but not sharing the same bedroom since, quote unquote, the bad time. Mm-hmm. And you get a sense for what they once had through the eye of the person who had cheated on her lover. And one of the things that they were doing, they went to a therapist, Ellen, and
so Ellen had a name.
Yeah, she had a name. The therapist had a name. And the therapist said, you have to find a new beginning that you both can agree on. And it ended up being culinary, because not intentional on, well, maybe intentional on the woman's part, but the cheater was remembering, that she loved the cooking, and anything that was cooked, like the smell of, the cookies baking and having the first taste, and to tell her if it tasted good or if there was anything needing. But there was never anything lacking, but it was like a communion. It's something that they shared together. And then the making of cookies was their new beginning. And I really liked that a lot. Because even as much as the viewpoint character pretty much had thought that there would never be a time where they could rebuild again. And then the cookies happen, and they tell each other they miss each other, and then it's like a place, a new beginning for them to try again.
But you don't, it's difficult, a situation like that. And that's one of the things, that theme actually played out in Land of Entrapment too, because Melissa, Casey's ex, had an affair. And one of the things that I really liked, I had a few readers contact me after they read Land of Entrapment, and they said that they really wanted to hate Melissa because she had the affair. Mm-hmm. But then they ended up not hating her because Casey and Melissa had the talk over a meal. and they both realized the forces that were driving them apart. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't really hate her. And I wanted people to come away with the sense that relationships are complicated, and even things like affairs don't happen in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. That things are complicated, and people do bad things, but it doesn't make them bad. And that's kind of what I wanted people to get from both Cookies and Melissa's difficulties in Land of Entrapment. I personally think I like Melissa as a character, and so that's why I bring her back now and again, just because I like her. I like to see how she's growing and trying to get her own crap under control. No, I agree with you on that, and also my past as a reader. There's this series by Teresa Smansky, and it's the Brett Higgins series. Yeah, no, that series. Yeah. Okay, and so Brett is an anti-hero. She's she's in organized crime. She works for, a porn/stripper house kind of thing going on amongst other stuff. And not only are you expected to dislike this type of character, because it's not the romanticized mafia kind of thing. And so you're not supposed to like her, but you do. And she doesn't even feel that she has redeemable qualities. But one of the things that I remember that got under my skin about her was how she kept on cheating on her girlfriend. And it just, it would happen in so many of the different books. It's like, why? Right. Why can't you keep it in your pants? But yeah. There's obviously something going on there that we all know that she has to figure out.
Yes.
And someone like that, I would obviously kind of take what I could from a character like that, or from a person like that in my life, because that's bad juju. You don't know. You're bringing some bad juju down on yourself, girl, if you keep that up. So but I understand why some people get caught up in their own crap, and they end up doing hurtful things. And Life is complicated. I'm just going to say, people are complicated, and you can't make black or white judgment calls against them. They just...
and I agree. And the thing that I appreciate now that I didn't appreciate when I first read it is that in real life, we don't suddenly learn our lesson and never do anything wrong ever again.
Right.
It's not like, oh, I finally found the right girl and I will not make any more mistakes with girls ever again.
It's a process.
Exactly. So I kind of, I see it, and and I have more of a place for that step away from perfection, because when you read a lot of lesbian romance, once they meet the right person, they get their shit together, or eventually by the end of the book they do, and then everything's golden. Like the players are no longer players, and whatnot. And
I think that's why I sort of enjoy writing series, because I get to sort of see how the characters evolve, not only with themselves, but in the relationship. And that occurs throughout my New Mexico series with both Casey and her love interest and Chris and her love interest. Mm-hmm. It's hard, though. You got to keep the romance alive for the readers, but you have to be realistic about how a relationship is going to evolve and shift as the people evolve and shift. Mm-hmm. It ain't all merry freaking sunshine. I'm sorry. Life doesn't work that way.
Exactly. And, I think the better series are ones that show, I guess, the seams as well as the good stuff that's happening, And, if you have a series, you see these people having problems with their continued relationship, whatever those problems may be. But the other thing that becomes problematic as well is eventually you have all these couples at the end of that road. Like, let's say, you're reading a series of 5 books. Each book has one particular romantic, love arc, whatever. And then you go to the next book, and then there's another romantic love arc. And then you have all the, if you're in Providencetown, and suddenly there are about a dozen amazing couples, like what happens next?
I know I only have 2 in my New Mexico series. I'm like, this is more than enough. Chris and her love interest, Casey and hers, and that's more than enough.
Absolutely. So we've talked a little bit about your New Mexico, or I guess, present time series. But you also have some sci-fi action going on. And one question that I had was, did it start out as Games of Chance? Was that just a short story?
That was the first. What happened was I wrote Games of Chance initially for Torquay Press. Are you familiar with them? Mm. They're another LGBT press, and they had a call for stories, and the stories had to center on a birthstone.
Oh.
And so I thought, because this is the way my brain works, I thought, opals. Opals are super cool, but what can I make really cool about opals and not just have your run-of-the-mill romance? And then I was like, oh my God, sci-fi. I know, an opal mine, and there's something going on. And that's how it started. and that's how that took off. And as it turns out, they couldn't use the story after all, because they already had a bunch of people who, can you believe it, wrote about opals. What? And I was like, are you serious? They wrote opals in space? I don't think so.
Opals in space.
Whatever. So anyway, I pitched it over to Bedazzled Inc. because I knew Bedazzled they do a lot of sci-fi. That's one of their big things. Okay. And I write what's called space opera, which is, think Star Wars and think Firefly. It's sort of like, and Star Trek, that's actually a space opera. It's like high adventure and space bandits, and just there's a well-defined bad guy. It's like Westerns in space, basically.
I love this terminology. I've never heard it referred to that way.
Well, I have a blog, actually. I'll shoot it to you about what exactly space opera is. And Bedazzled Inc., they love that over there. So I was like, well, you guys want to put this in Chimeral Inc., and that's where it first appeared initially, was in the free easing they used to do. And then, because I really liked those characters, this is always what happens. I'll write a short story, and I'll be like, man, I so miss those characters. And, and then it'll spin off into something else. And I decided, well, I'm going to expand this. I'm going to make this something even bigger. And that's what happened. But Games of Chance started as this Opal story that wasn't quite Opals yet. And I just kind of wrote it as a fun kind of thing. And then the Opal story became the novel, Friends in High Places.
Yeah, there are these little details that I enjoyed, like the it's almost like a very garbage-free experience, because you get food, and by the time you finish drinking it, the container it was in dissolves. And then,
isn't that great?
Yes, and it's like, and then she wipes her hand on her pants, And
I still want that. I mean, come on, where's our industry to develop this? I mean, how convenient. But it made sense, because if you ever watched the series Firefly and the movie Serendipity, or I think it was Serendipity, wasn't it? Those characters I loved a lot, and I wanted to have really cool characters that had lots of flaws, but also had a lot of fun. And Tori is like the bad girl, space girl. She's got issues, got big issues. And then I paired her with Kai, who's sort of like this very responsibility-driven person. So they're a yin and yang combination, but they work really well together. And if you read the rest of the series, I just turned book 3 into the publisher, and it should be out in May. If you read the rest of it, then you'll kind of see how the two of them sort of evolve, and how you find out that, well, maybe Kai isn't as straight-laced as you thought, and maybe Tori's not as crazy as you thought. So I mean, those two have been a lot of fun, writing those two characters. Yeah. And I don't have to do research. I get to make that up.
I have a question, and I know that it relates to Star Wars and whatnot, but why does it seem the best places to have these futuristic settings tend to be settings that are very gypsy, Arabic, Middle Eastern, Far Eastern kind of thing? I mean, even though you have different, even though you have like different types of beings and whatnot, it always seems to be some kind of like desert, sandy kind of thing.
In terms of Newburgh, that's because of the opals. I modeled it after Kubifora in Australia, or Kubipira. Is that the name of that? Yeah. Which is an actual place. It's a city, a town that's built. It's so hot there in the summers that they live in the ground. Mm-hmm. Everything's underground except like the tops of the roofs, which are these rounded kuberpidi, these rounded earthen mounds. And you go down into the city, and the number one thing there is they mine opals. That's where that came from. Ah. Newburgh is actually modeled on that. And I've always, it's on my bucket list, I've always wanted to go to Cooper PD. Mm-hmm. So I decided opals, and then I was like, where on earth can we get opals? Oh my God, Cooper PD! So that's where that actually came from. Wow. So I know.
Awesome.
That's how my brain works. But I know what you're talking about, and I think, like, if you think Frank Herbert's Dune, I mean, there's another one, A Desert Planet, with these.
Exactly. Dune was, Dune was a big book for me when I was younger, and because I joke with my friends that I peaked at 8, but my father used to call me Alia because I was so articulate and not a child in a child's body. So that's the reason why I fixated on that film, and of course that's like Desert Planet, Spice, all that kind of stuff. But
that actually plays out in A Matter of Blood. There is a culture there that is sort of Dune-ish, but not quite. I call them the Radish, and they're modeled after sort of an androcentric tribal culture. I have a degree in anthropology, so I draw from that as well when I write other cultures and stuff. And that was articulate. I write other cultures and stuff.
And then there are people in it, and they have certain funerary devices, and that tells us a lot about their culture and what they value.
But the whole point, the Radish culture has, one of the things that they do is they live out in this really crazy environment. It is sort of deserty on this other planet. But one of the things that their culture requires them to do is called take the parasite. And everybody gets injected with this parasite when they're a certain age. And the parasite then sort of transforms not their physiology, but how they are able to cope with the environment. At least that's the conventional wisdom in the book. Nobody really knows for sure because they're very secretive. Okay. So that's part of what's driving the plot of A Matter of Blood, because you inject it into the blood. And there's issues around blood, and you can't spill your blood, you can't share your blood, you can't have doctors take your blood because it's sacred. So that's part of that whole the book that I wrote. I don't know where that idea came from. I don't really honestly have no idea. Just one day I was like, wouldn't it be cool?
So like you're saying that and I'm like, far out, man. That's crazy.
Parasites in their bodies, and that made them really awesome environmentalist kind of inclined. Wouldn't that be awesome? So that's kind of where I just have these moments in the middle of the day. Wouldn't it be cool
if blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and then book 3 actually takes place on a heavily jungle planet, which is, I decided they all needed a vacation from the deserts. So I'm like, all right, you guys, I'm sticking you on a jungle planet. So they get to hang out in the jungles for a while, kind of, as you'll see.
Cool beans. So I have some questions from your readers.
Oh, good. The 5 of them wrote in. Woo! All right, thanks, guys.
It was a team effort. So Jean Barrett McGill wrote, "How tall are you? The question is in vogue lately."
Yeah, I know. I already told her.
Yeah. Okay.
See, the thing, Jean's, we've met in person. She freaking knows. She's just giving me a hard time.
She's yanking your chain.
Yeah.
So because there was a lot of questions online today as to how you should dress for the interview, how did you go for it?
Well, I'm not telling.
Ooh. Because I teased on Facebook, well, you could go commando. And the funny thing is...
I would stick to my office seat. Let's just
because I actually had, I was doing an interview on the cocktail hour, and the subject matter got so steamy that one of the authors actually started to disrobe because she was getting hot and bothered. So
that's kind of, I won't go there with you, Liz, but sorry. We have standards. This is a family show.
No, it isn't. Cussing is also approved of.
Yeah, well, Andi lets me cuss on that show. I actually have a pretty bad potty mouth. I'm toning it down. I'm trying to be classy.
Oh man. If anybody ever said, "Liz, people are trying to be classy around you," I would have been laughing, pounding the floor.
More sensitive readers who don't appreciate my colorful language.
Ooh, goodness gracious. So obviously you're concentrated, since you're altitudinally challenged apparently.
Yes. But I'm loud.
Yes. Carrie Carr asked, "Do you have to psych yourself up to write, or can you just sit down and the words arrive? If it's the latter, let me into your dang secret. What's your secret?"
Everybody's different. This is part of what I enjoy at Women in Words is when we deal with a lot, that's the other side I blog with. When we deal with other authors, I always ask about their process, because different processes just fascinate me. How people create kind of the same sort of material. We're all creating books and stories, but how they go about it in such different ways. I love that. It's so fascinating to me. One of my best examples is I was talking to Jane Fletcher, who writes the, I don't know how she pronounces it. I call it the Solano series. And she outlines everything down to the last absolute detail. This is how her mind works. She's one of those really computer-driven, logic kind of people, and nothing gets into her book that is not on her outline.
Wow.
And I found that really fascinating, and I asked her, you mean your characters don't just take over and fling around in your books? And she's like, absolutely not. She was like kind of offended that her characters presumed to be their own individuals every now and again.
Goodness.
And I thought, wow, that must be kind of a drag working with you, Jane. No, I'm kidding. I do.
Do you know what's funny though? That like for those of you who haven't read the Solano series, she did not write them in sequence, which for me like makes me twitch, because even though I'm, you know, when I write, I'm not one of those outliners or a pantster, kind of in somewhere in between. But I was like, must read in order. What? They're published? No, they're not in sequence.
She does like, it's an interesting series in that some of it is standalone within the series. I really like the world she created. I like to go spend time there, and I appreciate Jane's detail and her I want to say her, anal retentiveness with her craft because it's there. But for me, I don't outline. It's not one of, if I'm writing nonfiction, then obviously I do. But with fiction, I don't. I'm one of those stream of consciousness kind of people, and one of those people, I'll sit down and I'll be like, all right, let me go back. I'm going to read a little bit and get kind of jazzed up for the scene. And then I'll go right to where I left off and just pick up and just go. I don't know why. I don't know how. I very rarely have a day where I'm not able to do that. And if I don't feel like writing, I don't.
Good.
I think sometimes writers push themselves too hard and they get freaked out and they're like, writer's block. Oh my God. And the reality is maybe you need to take a day off. Maybe you should go to a movie and call your friends, cook something, do something different.
Have some wine and chocolate with your hot neighbor.
Catch up with your partner. Just don't write. If you just aren't feeling it, some writers will say, oh, well, you got to like push through it and blah, blah, blah. I'm more gentle with myself because I find that I produce more and I produce, I think, a better quality product if I'm actually enjoying the writing session. Mm-hmm. If I hate it, then it's going to suck and I'm going to have to rewrite it anyway. So I want to be in the moment with my characters. And I tend to do a lot of visualization with my characters. Like, I was teasing, one of my readers asked me about, well, when's New Mexico 4 coming out? And I was like, well, Chris just called me and she's not happy with this particular scene in there. So I have to go back in and redo it. So I'll let you know. Because I do have sit-down sessions with my characters. It's like I'll hand them a script before we actually begin a book, and I'll be like, what do you guys think?
That is so not me. I would never say that.
And they'll read through it, and I hear them saying, oh my God, Andy, dude, this is totally fucked up. Dana would never say that. I was like, oh, God, you're right. Okay, let me go back. Fix that. Where did that come from? I don't know, dude. You're the writer. Get it together. So they do kind of like, they're very lifelike in my head. They're movies in my head. And somebody else asked me, well, where do you get the ideas for your characters? And some of them I sort of have bouncing around in my head, but others, like Dana in State of Denial, she's what I call a walk-on. She just kind of showed up the day of the audition, walked on the stage, did her scene, and I was like, sold, you're in. And that's how that worked. So some of them, I don't know them, and they just show up while I'm writing, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that was a really good secondary character there to bolster the plot narrative. Thank you.
Sweet. The other thing,
it's organic, Carrie. I don't know what to tell you.
The process is very organic. I don't use pesticides. One of the problems that some writers come into, and I know myself, is that if you're not doing it regularly, you can very easily just let a story slide.
That's true.
So that, there has to be, everybody has their own process. Yes. And for me, I can get stalled out and it could be lonely all on its own someplace else. Like I need some level of momentum to keep me going. I
agree with that, but I'm still one of those people who's like, if you're in a funky place, you gotta
let it go. But just as long as you go back into the beginning.
My readers I know are wondering, why the hell haven't you written anything in a while? Well, you guys, I spent 18 months with a series of really messed up events and health problems. And they precluded me from getting much done. I finally started really breaking through that around October, November 2011, and I hammered out the third sci-fi book. I wrote floral designs during that time. This involves surgery. It's just been kind of a train wreck, and I lost my dog in 2011, and that was really brutal. We'd been together like 15 years, my canine buddy. So it's just been a series of unfortunate events that just really sidelined me, and I had to focus on healing before I could really work on my books. And now that I'm feeling much better and things are where they should be, it's like the stories are just, they're not stopping. And I'm like, you guys need to just chill a minute. I have to finish this project. I got to finish that one. But I've got like this huge backlog of stuff that just is demanding that I write their story. And I'm like, you got to wait a second. You guys just chill a minute. Just chill. So I'm sort of inundated right now because I took such a hiatus. It took me a good 8 or 9 months before I could really start writing again after all this crappy crap happened.
Well, you need to take a break sometimes.
Yeah. I've been open with one of my health issues. I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I had a mastectomy February 2012. So I was very fortunate. It was non-invasive. It was stage 0, but it was in there. And that kind of took the wind out of my sails after I lost my dog, and I had this other health issue that required surgery. And then I had like this whole emotional weirdness. I was open about that too, about losing part of my body, and that was just like, So it took me, basically, you guys, it took me a while to get it back together. And now I feel like I'm back together.
Which is good. You know, you need to take that time to heal.
Yeah, and I don't generally go around like, I don't feel well, so I'm not going to write today. But I don't think I've ever had 18 months where it was just one thing after another. And I would wake up every day and go, okay, are we done yet? Can we
move on, please?
With other things? It was pretty messed up. And yeah, it is what it is. It was life, and I feel very good right now. I feel very, 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 very fortunate, and I am just really glad to be back on the saddle and writing again regularly.
Andy and I went off on a little tangent about computers, but I decided to excise it and bring us to the point where we started talking about her work again. Which just brings me back to all those fast food places that she went to, and you know the packaging would dissolve right around the time when she'd finished eating it.
Isn't that great?
What I thought was really interesting technologically was when she was gambling, and one of the people that she was playing with was a cheater. And had, one person behind him at the table, also one of the drones that come down and bring them their drinks.
Yeah.
And she catches it. And one of the things that she does to fool with the technology is by putting her hand over her cards so that her blood vessels and the bones would make it difficult for whatever they were trying to look through and see what her cards were. So I thought that was groovy. And then the guy put in one of those opals that was a really good fake, and also had rigged his credits, so even if he did lose it, people wouldn't be able to actually have access to the income. So she had one of the people at the club or whatever, jerry rig it so she could actually get the credits away from him.
Well, she's a bandit, and she won the money, fair and square.
For once. This is above board, damn it. Give me my credits. Absolutely.
Don't ever mess with Tori when she's gambling. Does not cheat. That is the one thing she will not cheat at.
That was awesome. Switching gears, let's talk about Women in Words. It's a blog that you do with fellow author Jove Bell.
Jove thought, wouldn't it be cool? It's one of those wouldn't it be cool moments. Wouldn't it be cool if we had like a blog where we could post things by other authors and sort of build a community of not just like authors from one publisher but authors from across the lesbian fiction publishing spectrum. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm in, let's do it. So Jove actually launched the site, and then I became admin. And 2011 was kind of a crappy year for both of us. It was just bad. I mean, so Women in Words kind of struggled along, and I'll admit that we were not up to par with what we were trying to do with it in 2011. But then we sort of like kind of converged, both our energy levels and our issues sort of are in a place where we can better deal with them, and things are getting better. And so Jove jumped back into the game. She took a long hiatus due to she's been fairly open about it. Her mother passed, and it was really difficult for her. And then I had my issues, and it was just a train wreck for a while. But then, now that we're back on the same page, it's just sort of morphed into this really interesting thing where we get all kinds of different authors coming in, and Jove knows a lot of people. I know a lot of people. And what's really cool, in the last 2 or 3 years especially, and I knew this was going to happen in 2009, I predicted it. I said, you watch, in 2 or 3 years, we're going to have so many indie authors, we won't even know what to do with them. And sure enough, here we are 2 or 3 years later, and we've got lesbic indie authors coming out the yin yang. And so we're trying to bring them on board too, because they're authors, they're writing lesbian fiction. So they may not be part of the lesbian publishing industry per se, but they are part of the movement of lesbian fiction. So, and we keep looking for more indies too. They're out there, we just have to find them.
I know, for me...
And they have to find us.
For me, one of my challenges is that I'm a nester. I know a lot of women are, and one of the nesting things that I had was that I was so pleased with what I got from Bold Strokes that I just tend to would go to their website and get their books. And then
it's interesting.
Yeah, and so I was nested because whenever I bought something from Bold Strokes, I was happy. Bold Strokes, go back to Bold Strokes. But I realized, that I was missing out on a lot because I was so focused there, not because other publishing houses didn't do well, but I was like, I'm happy with these people. I want to play with them.
Sure.
But
Bold Strokes does what it does very well.
Exactly.
I mean, absolutely.
So, but the thing is, Andy from the Cocktail Hour used to tease me about my Bold Strokes proclivities. So one of the things that I've been trying to do with this show, the Liz McMullen show, is to get all sorts of folks on, people who self-publish, people from different publishing houses. And apparently, I've become a new hotbed. I've had about 7 or 8 authors who are erotica short story writers and editors who will be coming on the show. And there've been so many of them that I'm like, yes, I can have you on the show, but I'm going to have to pace it out because I don't want my brand to seem like Liz likes erotica. She's just having erotica authors on.
But it's important, I think, to bring that discussion into any discussion about genre fiction. That's an important genre. I mean, and we can go into details about what's the difference between erotica porn and romance, because a lot of my romance stories, there's sex in there. I'm not going to deny it. I have written what I would consider erotica. I've got one published in an anthology, and then there's one on my website, which I consider, it's sex for the purpose of just getting off.
Yeah.
Enjoying it, having a good time with it, whatever. So sure, I think that's a totally valid discussion to have. Good for you.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I'm not a published author, but I do write, and the shorter things that I write, I call, they're just porn. It's not porn with plot. It's not porn with plot. It's just pornography. But it's not a bad thing. And I get, it comes under the rubric of erotica, which is a really nice word for it. Accurate.
I'm sure the authors will tell you the difference between erotica and porn.
Oh, I know there is a difference because I've been called a porn nerd.
Well, I think it has to do with the gaze of the characters and the gaze of the readers. It all ties into whether you can classify it as erotica or porn.
Yeah.
And anyway, yes, readers, I do actually have some erotica out there.
I actually have a bit of erotica on the what's it called? Cocktail Hour website, because I wrote it for the Cocktail Hour. And there are certain aspects that got in there because Sherry likes strap-on sex. So even though the story could have ended a few pages before it ended, I was like, I gotta have some strap-on sex for Sherry.
Strap-on sex, Liz. That's a little TMI there, girl. Sherry, sorry. We know you meant read it, right? I don't know what your personal tastes are.
No, all this is above board, I swear to God.
Okay.
These weren't like, private phone call conversations.
Whew. Okay.
No, I have boundaries. But no, and the thing is, I wrote it for the cocktail hour. I read it for it, and I did not the best reading. But reading is harder than I thought it would be until I tried to do it.
You know what's really hard to read is sex scene.
Yeah?
Oh my God, that is one of those things are super hard to write. I think the hardest thing for me to write is a sex scene, is a believable, sexy sex scene. The second hardest thing is to freaking read that out loud to an audience.
Yes. So I read it, but I'm not that happy with it. But they have a hard copy. It's called Hard Rock Candy, and it's on the Cocktail Hour website. And I do talk about it after I do the reading, what it's associated with and whatnot. But no, I mean, I'm happy that these authors are coming to me and that, they're from, they're short story writers. And I guess one of the things I'm striving to do is to make sure that there's room for variety. So even if I have a series of different erotic authors on the show, I also want to have, other genre writers as well. Let's say we're going to have some romantic fiction or sci-fi, or, going to have some authors that self-publish, some from established publishing houses, just so that it's still a thriving organism rather than getting into a particular niche.
Well, that's what Joe and I are trying to do at Women in Words. We want, a lot of different people to come on and tell us about your work and blog a little bit, and we'll do giveaways. We do a lot of giveaways over there, which I think is fun.
Speaking of giveaways, you and I have been talking about doing a giveaway for this show.
Give it away, give it away,
give it away now.
A song for every occasion.
Oh, my Lord. Let's have some Red Hot Chili Pepper action.
Same.
So what would you like to have as a giveaway question?
Oh, they have to answer a question?
Yes. You can ponder, and I'll tell them how to get their answers to me.
So give me an example of a question, Liz. What kind of question are we talking about?
Well, it could be a question about something that you've written, and you would have had to have read it to know the answer, kind of like proving your true fan status.
That's going to be tough. Oh, my God.
So how did you know it was a fake opal? I don't know, something along those lines.
I don't know, I made that up.
Yes, I don't know. I made it up. There's no good reason. Anyway, so she's going to ponder a question, and you can get your answer to me by writing to the Liz McMullen Show at gmail.com. Anything comes to mind?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm currently working on the 4th book in the New Mexico series, and for those who follow the series, even-numbered books star Chris Gutierrez, and odd-numbered books star Casey Fontero. This is book 4. This is a Chris book, and so let's have a Chris question. Okay. Where in Mexico is Chris's grandmother from?
Okay. There you have it.
You don't need the city, just tell me the Mexican state.
Okay, the state. Okay, we got that. And also, you're going to do a reading for us.
Oh my God, for reals?
For reals.
Just so readers know, I want to put this out there. Since I'm back in the saddle now, I just released my latest novella on Kindle. I'm kind of a hybrid. Currently I'm working with 2 publishers, and then I do stuff on my own as well. So this is one of my indie publications. It's available on Kindle. It's called From the Boots Up. It's a romance set in Wyoming, because I am a Westerner by birth and blood. and I miss the West all the time, even when I'm in it. So I write Western-based stories. So sue me. So anyway, From the Boots Up, you can catch that on Amazon if you're into it. Also, my third sci-fi novel will be coming out hopefully in May. I'm waiting on the edits from the publisher, and it's another Tori and Kai adventure. Dun, dun, dun. And then I'm finishing up the fourth New Mexico book, and I generally don't release titles before I'm ready to post an excerpt. I have a weird superstition about it. But let's just say that this particular book is titled After a Holiday. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So let's do a reading from the fourth New Mexico book. And as I've told my readers, or people who read my stuff regularly, that I actually don't do that many readings because nobody ever asks. And whatever, fine. But they actually wanted a reading. So I thought, okay, let me give you a little bit of my work in progress. This is New Mexico 4, starring Chris Gutierrez. What we'll do here is I will I'll set the scene for you a little bit, and then you'll have a little bit of Chris, and then you'll have a conversation between Chris and Casey, because as you know, Casey comes and goes and Chris comes and goes. They come and go throughout each other's books. So here we are in Albuquerque. Chris has just been on the scene of a murder, of course, because that's what she does. She's a homicide detective. And now we're in the aftermath, and we're going to start the major investigative part of it. So here we go. Crime scene tape still fluttered in the late October breeze as Chris studied Victor Ramirez's house Monday afternoon. Things looked different in daylight, without the police lights flashing and the uniformed cops standing in the middle of the street, and without the crime scene RV blocking traffic or the ambulance taking Victor Ramirez's body to the medical examiner's office. In the sunlight, it was just another Albuquerque neighborhood west of Old Town, where kids still played in the front yards of the small stuccoed houses, and men gathered on porches to talk and drink beer in the evenings, and women cooked big pots of green chile and made tamales on weekends. Would they still do that, she wondered, after what happened the night before, after someone shot a few holes in Ramirez? Would the people who lived in this neighborhood be able to carry on like they had before? Or would they mark time with a before Victor and an after Victor chronology and lament the way it was before violent crime came to their neighborhood? Or would they even care? Maybe Ramirez wasn't well liked or even well known. Maybe the neighbors hadn't yet decided how to categorize him, and maybe some were relieved that he was gone because they suspected he might bring trouble. She'd seen that many times in areas of Albuquerque like this, where communities bound themselves together through a shared sense of ethnic identity and familiarity. Neighborhoods like this, west and north of Old Town, had raised generations of the same families and bore the flavors of both Nuevo Mexicano and more recent Mexican or Central American residents, some of whom, Chris knew, probably came here illegally. Whoever had shot Ramirez went overboard, she thought, as she leaned against the passenger side of her car. Whoever killed him wanted to be thorough, something that she had been mulling since she investigated the scene the night before. An execution-style hit was usually one shot to the head. A burglary interrupted might be a quick, panicked shot that may or may not find the target. This didn't feel like a hit or a burglary interrupted. Whoever had shot Victor Ramirez clearly wanted to make sure he was dead, and maybe didn't have the confidence of someone who was comfortable with guns. Or the shooter was really angry at the target and pulled the trigger more than once just because he felt Ramirez needed it. Chris pushed off her car and stood staring at the house, willing it to give up its secrets, but it remained stubbornly silent. She adjusted her blazer to make sure it hid the gun on her right hip. Chris had clipped her badge to her belt just to the left of her buckle, so it was easy to see up close, but not necessarily something anyone would notice from a distance. She carried a digital recorder in the inside pocket of her blazer, along with a pen and a notepad, though in this neighborhood she doubted anyone would allow themselves to be recorded. And she also doubted that anyone would want to do a sit-down interview with her anyway. But maybe, because her last name was Gutierrez, she'd have some play. All right, so there we go. Chris is investigating the death of Victor Ramirez. Now, let's skip ahead. It's been a long day. She's exhausted. She's hungry. She wants some pizza.
There's got to be some food involved, right, Andy?
That's Chris's comfort food, pizza with green chili. And man, I should ask that question, shouldn't I? Dang. Oh, well, that's all right. Okay. So, anyway, so now Chris is at home, and she calls Casey. As people who follow the series know, Casey and Chris are best friends. And they kind of bounce ideas off each other and get involved in each other's business. So she's going to call her and ask her some questions because she learned some things in her interviews with neighborhood people. So here's Chris calling up Casey. She dials Casey's number. "Hey, mujer, Sage and I were just talking about you," Casey said when she answered. "Oh, God, should I worry?" "Well, yeah, because, we're always plotting shit." Chris laughed. "Oh, my God, truer words were never spoken." "Haha, Detective Amusing over here. So what's up? How's Dana?" "She's fine, and I need you." Chris took the pitcher of tea out of the fridge and filled her glass again. She took a drink. "Damn, Chris, must you say things like that when you know I'm vulnerable to your feminine wiles?" Chris almost spit tea across the kitchen, and in the background she heard Sage laughing. "Have you ever had feminine wiles?" Casey mused. "Nah, just wiles, and a bad case of them. Have those looked at, will you? I'm sure Dana can help you out." "And that's why I keep you around." Chris set her glass on the counter. "Oh, I figured. Okay, for real, what's up? Another wingnut group you need tracked? A militia check? Crazy apocalyptic bunkers in the East Mountains? I'm your gal." Chris walked into the living room and lit the jar candles she kept on her coffee table. "Sorry, no. Though you are my favorite professor for that sort of thing. This is something else entirely. Do you remember that student you had last year, the one who did a project on illegal immigration, who won that essay prize?" "Yeah, Brianna Lopez. Why?" Chris returned to the kitchen and leaned on her island counter. "Didn't you find out that her mother came over the border with a coyote?" No, her aunt came over with a coyote. Brianna's father was born in California and her mother's from Texas, but half of her dad's family still lives in Mexico. It was one of her dad's sisters. But she crossed into New Mexico, right? Not Arizona." "I think so," Casey said. "I can find out for sure if you want." "Yeah, would you? Let me know." Chris stared at the photo of Dana she kept on the mantle, and a dull ache settled in her chest, not entirely unpleasant. "Can I ask what this is about, or is it super secret cop stuff?" "It's super secret cop stuff. I'm just sort of looking at coyote networks. It might have a connection to a case I've got." "Gotcha. Your secret is safe with me, mujer." Chris smiled. "I know. Everything I am and everything I own is safe with you." "Yeah, and don't you forget it." "I can't. You won't let me." Chris's front doorbell rang. "Okay, the pizza's here, Asa. I gotta go. Let me know what you find out." "Will do. Hi to Dana from both of us. Later. Asta." Chris set the phone on the counter and went to the front door. Pizza paid for, she settled in for the evening, her candles throwing soft, warm light around her house and furnishings, a mixture of Mexico and the Southwest. By the time she'd finished eating 2 pieces of pizza, Ramirez was in a back file in her brain. She ate 1 more piece, cleaned up, and dialed Dana's number. The best kind of ending to any day. So there we go, folks.
That was awesome. I want more. it's like, can't you just...
I'm working on it. I'm almost done. My God. I'm like slamming on it since the dam broke.
Oh, Lord. I was just thinking can't you just keep on reading and I'll just curl up in a ball and listen.
Well, we could talk with Harper next.
No, That's
Dana's partner. When you read State of Denial, if you read State of Denial, you'll meet Dale Harper, who is Chris's partner on the force. Mm-hmm. Chris's partner. Dana is an attorney with the prosecutor's office.
No, I love. See, you should do more readings because you're awesome at it.
Well, nobody ever asks, Liz.
That's just so funny because when you mentioned that on Facebook, I'm like, really?
Yeah, no.
Because almost all of my authors have done them, and I know that there was.
That's funny. I don't know. I mean, and because of the stupidness over the past couple of years, I haven't been able to go to GCLS the last 2 years. So.
Yes, I am a GCLS virgin. I will be going there this year with my partner.
Dallas.
I know, and
wait, there's a song for that. Going through the big D, don't mean Dallas. Or we could be George Strait about it.
Oh my Lord!
See if you know this one. All my exes
live in Texas.
I knew you knew that one.
Everybody has to know that one. Actually, I know a lot of random older country music because my grandmother from Oklahoma used to always have it playing on the transistor radio.
Right on. That's awesome.
Yes.
There are like 2 places in the West that really should not ever be in country western songs that don't lend themselves. You know, you get these great song titles like Amarillo by morning, up from San Antonio. Those sound like cool. Albuquerque does not lend itself to country songs.
It sounds like more like nursery rhymes.
There's a song a country song with Albuquerque in the song, and I can't remember the artist or the title, but I used to think, God, and this is why Albuquerque is not in country songs.
No, it just doesn't roll off the tongue.
The other one is Lubbock, sadly. Lubbock doesn't really lend itself to sort of a romantic country vibe. Mm-mm. But, you know, no offense, Lubbock'ians. I'm just saying.
Lubbock'ians.
I've been to Lubbock. There's some cool stuff to do in Lubbock. I had to look, but I found it. And it's got that really, you know, the wide open spaces. I mean, that part of Texas is pretty flat.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like not being able to see anything except horizon and skies. Mm-hmm. It makes me feel kind of like, yeah, I'm on an adventure.
Yeah, I think, you know, they're and it's cultural, I know it is, that there are certain sites that make someone feel at ease and other ones that make ill at ease. Like, for example, I'm from Hoboken, and I went to college in New England. So I like mountains, I like hills. So being in Florida that is so flat.
It's very flat, yeah.
It's like, but there's nothing, because, you know, you're driving around and it's like one strip mall connected to another strip mall. Where's the beauty? You know, and of course their beauty is they've got gorgeous ass water, you know, and you can do great stuff there. But for me, I'm like, we need a gradient of some kind.
Yeah. That's an important aspect, an element, I think. And I keep trying to do a writing workshop on this at GCLS. We'll see if they take me up on it this year. But setting, because where you are determines who you are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's missing in a lot of writing, is that people are actually, they're forged by the landscapes in which they grow up and that they live in. And I tried to sort of bring that into my work in terms of the mysteries that I write and the short stories, because we are all part of our environments and we are part of the cultures within those environments, and that stuff rubs off. And you adopt certain things and certain mannerisms and certain cadences to how you talk. You and I were talking about this earlier. It's just kind of like, I try to bring some of that into my work because it's something that's always fascinated me, is how where people are determines who they are.
I actually have a quote that I highlighted in my handy dandy iPad.
You go. Oh my God.
That relates to this.
Oh my God.
Oh Lord. So this is from the Land of Entrapment. And the cool thing about iPads is you can highlight things, and then you can just go to one button and it shows all the different things that you highlighted. And I have to say, Andy, I have not highlighted a lot lately, but the stuff you write is just so colorful and awesome that I have to highlight it. So here we go. Exactly. It's like, you know, do that little wave. This is completely setting oriented. Sweat was collecting in the waistband of my jeans. I hate that. During Central Texas summer, the heat fogs your brain and wrings every drop of sweat from your pores. It hangs in the air like heavy clouds and follows you like Grandpa's healers. You can sit inside and watch the heat sniff around your windows and doors, or you could try to outdrive it, but it's always as fast or as slow as your vehicle. And when you stop, it glares at you like a pissed-off ex-girlfriend.
That was Casey.
Yes.
She was in the middle of her summer of her postdoc on Grandpa's farm, and yeah, I have spent summers in Central Texas, and I gotta tell you, that shit is brutal. I don't know how people do it. Bless their hearts, as they say.
Exactly.
I went to Austin the year it was, oh my God, 110. And that wasn't with the humidity index. They factor that in. The heat index is what it's called. You know, they do heat indexes where you are. And I was like what the hell is this about? I didn't know. I mean, you know, I'm from a freaking desert, so I'm like, driving along, and it was brutal. That shit pushed me to the pavement. It was like a super hot, heavy, wet woolen blanket.
Exactly. That's just disgusting,
But there's something surreal about it too. And if you think about the heat and what it does and the humidity, this is my theory on why, like, southern states who have to deal with that, why people talk slow.
Yes, exactly.
That's my theory.
I'm with you on that. And absolutely. In New England, sometimes you'll have the last snow. It goes from the last snow to fuck off hot. Like trapped by trees, and it's just hot. It's hot and it's steamy and it's hot. And it's hot. One of the things I want to tie up the interview, because I could talk to you forever. You're awesome.
Give me a buzz, girl. We'll just chat.
Sure. But one of the things that I think it was our same awesome reader, Terry Fontaine, and she was talking about food and hospitality. And this last quote that I have, which is also from Land of Entrapment, talks about an interesting twist of automatic hospitality. Don't, I heard myself whisper. No matter how badly I wanted to, I couldn't have her touching me. I needed to maintain some sense of control, of pride. Her hands dropped to her side. I abruptly pulled my gloves off and shoved them in my back pocket, trying to dispel the moment. Well, you're here, so let's talk. Would you like to have something to drink? I winced. My hostess mode always steps in when I'm having a problem with reality. I'm not sure if this is a good or a bad thing. It might be inappropriate in certain situations. Sir, before you kidnap me, make it look like I died in an accident. Would you care for a sandwich?
Well, you're facing your ex. You know, you haven't talked to her in 3 years. It was a horrible breakup. She's come all the way to Texas. I mean, you don't really want to be rude, right? I mean, you don't want, hey, bitch, what are you doing here? So you want to be like, oh, okay, it's hot. I'm going to get something to drink. You want something?
Which is so not what my upbringing was. You know, you grow up in Hoboken, which is pretty much the same thing as Brooklyn, New York, whatever. It's like we'll tell you exactly what we think of you, kind of thing. But offering, yo, before I cap you, you want a drink? You know, it's not going to come. It doesn't flow off the tongue.
I'm a manners freak, I guess. I don't know. Casey has some of that.
No, I admire manners in others. I have so few manners and wiles.
I get a lot more done with manners.
Yes, more with honey than with vinegar.
More when I use good manners.
So,
you'd be surprised at things I find out.
Do you know what? Ilya has this way, she works a lot of angles. Like, she gets us free shit all the time. And it's either because, like, let's say you're in a hotel, it's either because the person's gay or the person's Latino or gay and Latino simultaneously.
Right on.
She just knows how to work it.
Girl.
I was
That's
like,
what I'm talking about.
She's fierce. First of all, we were in Cancun. She got us a private room away from everybody in the quiet section.
How'd she swing that? Who'd she talk to?
She talked to a really cute queer Latino boy.
There you go.
And it had a jacuzzi. It was great. It wasn't even what we had paid for. It was more than that. And I was like, you rock. I can't work it like that. I leave it up to her. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show. I definitely would like to have you back on again.
Okay, just tell me when.
You bet.
Oh my God, wait, we have to answer. Well, I'll email her directly and tell her what the answers are to my questions. Her questions. Jenna Stafford, she has some questions. Was that her name? Yeah.
Because I think I went through most stuff.
She asked if any of my stuff, if I had favorites. And you know what? I don't. I love all my characters.
You love all your babies the same. I have...
Even the bad characters. I mean, I'm actually, because they're part of...
They're real.
Panoply of humanity, I hope. And there are some stories that I really bonded with, and there are some characters that I really, really feel an affinity toward. I notice a lot of people are crushed out on Des and Mel from Some Kind of River. I'm kind of hoping to get that reaction to the two in From the Boots Up, because that story's been with me a few years. And I had a really hard time letting it go into the world, because those two characters and I have a history. And I want to make sure that, I take care of them and represent. I represent them, okay?
Absolutely.
So I hope they like them as much as they like Des and Mel.
Well, we'll have to have you on again to talk about more of your books, and maybe I'll twist your arm and get you to read again for me, because I loved it.
Sure.
Okay, take care.
All right, Liz, take care of yourself.
Okay, folks, I'm going to take a little bit more of your time. I have a new series called Lizzie's Bedtime Stories, and they are readings from authors, lesbian fiction authors, that can be steamy or sweet or fun, anything that would be pleasurable for a little lesbian to listen to late on Wednesday nights, which is when it's going to be published every week. Starting in April 3rd, our first guest is Isabella. I am having a contest for somebody to create the logo for the new series. So I need something that's original, and if you're using photographs, you need to have permission to use the photographs. And if you get chosen, you'll be on my site, acknowledged for being awesome, and I will get you a book of your choice signed by one of your favorite authors. So to enter, send your JPEG, or you can send a Photoshop file to the Liz McMullen Show at gmail.com. I hope to hear from you soon, and even if you're not going to be a part of the contest, I hope you'll be a happy listener, or for you authors out there, a contributor.